Welcome to Retirementals, a podcast that dives headfirst into the issues facing the financial sector at the intersection of investment, technology and financial advice. Hosted by Abraham Okusanya, you can expect raw honesty, critical analysis and energetic interviews. Here is your host, Abraham Okusanya.
Hello and welcome to Retirementals. I am Abraham Okusanya and it's great to have you all here on the podcast today. I am really excited about my guest today. I have known Ruth Sturkey for the best part of a decade, and Ruth is, one of those formidable people in financial planning. She's a non-executive director at Paradigm Norton and the vice chair of the Institute of Financial Wellbeing. Ruth, welcome to Retirementals.
Hey, thanks, Abraham. Formidable. I'm never quite sure what that means, but, hey, you've said it. It's out there. I'll go with it.
Oh, formidable, dynamic, glamorous. Should I go on and on?
Oh, yeah, keep on with the compliments. That's great. Thank you.
No, but I really, truly mean that. I met you, must be best part of 10 years ago, at the what was then the Institute of Financial Planning. You were running Red House Consulting, a firm that you co-founded. Take us back to what your journey in financial planning has been till date.
Wow. Straight in there. So my journey in financial planning, it's been, I think it's probably fair to say, before I found financial services, I'd done a number of other jobs in my 20s, and they were all formative, I think, as most of life experiences are. And, I think to be a really good financial planner, it is very important that you've spent time training to be a nurse, selling drugs legally, and also selling cars, Abraham. Wouldn't you agree? So I'd done a few things before finding myself in the late 80s, early 90s, when, actually inflation was probably quite similar to what it's like now, which we thought was a historical event. Getting into the murky end of what was then, I don't mean it to now, but then remortgages and endowment sales, and kind of very quickly found out or realized that there was something quite wrong about that business model. And I kind of moved through those learnings and worked for a large insurance company in their direct sales for a while, and then gradually found myself into the IFA world, using the term deliberately, as that's what it was then, and got my first advisory role as an IFA, which was really, really scary. But like most people, and women in particular, I think when you're lacking in confidence and you don't know that you're any good, I just started to take exams. So I took exams, becoming chartered. I think in the early noughties, before kind of most people were really bothering to get as qualified as, I think we're now seen as the table stakes these days. And then from there, I found myself working for a national IFA, caught in middle management. It was an amalgamation of 5 IFAs that were owned by an insurance company that had been smashed together. There was no cultural fit. There was lots of product sales. There were lots of people earning shed loads of money doing, churning group personal pension plans and things like that. And I kind of thought, this isn't what I've trained to become. This isn't what I'm qualified to do. There must be a better way of doing it. And I think for me, it's when you start to become, I describe it, that moany employee. So I'm being an absolute pain in the ass to my bosses and things because I'm moaning about stuff. And I don't like being that person, and so you get to a point where you get fed up with the sound of your own voice and you kind of think to yourself, well, you know what, either do something about it or shut up, that put up or shut up. And it became this ball that started to roll, this kind of snowball, which culminated in myself and Gareth Miles setting up the Red House in 2007, which was, I think, when I really began to understand money and people properly.
So that's an incredible story, and I don't actually see you. I can't imagine you, moaning and complaining about your job. But you founded the Red House, with Gareth, and you grew that firm. I don't know, over the subsequent decade, 15 years, to one of the leading financial planning firms in the UK. Talk to me a little bit about that journey, that experience of actually, founding a firm and being in control of your own destiny, as it were.
Yeah, well, it's thank you for your kind words about the Red House. I think we were kind of small but perfectly formed, and I think what we did very well. But I think it's really important. It's certainly important for me to say, I had this appetite to set up my own business, and I was kind of in my early mid-40s by that point, and it wasn't something I thought I would ever do. It was right. My education and upbringing hadn't made me feel I was a natural business owner or a leader of people. It was more when I realized, or I noticed, that the people around me who were running, very large firms didn't seem to know that much more than me, which sounds, really bloody conceited. And I don't mean it like that. But what I mean is, you kind of realize that nobody really knows what they're doing until they give it a go. And I think for me, that was where I got to. I was very fortunate going into business with Gareth, in as much as he'd had experience of running businesses in the past and had a good reputation within financial services. And Gareth was really good, I think, at pulling together the structure and the governance for the Red House. And he was also a bloody good salesperson with a very strong value set. Linda, who was our third business partner, who joined Gareth and I very early on, Linda's skill was in running a mean back office. She knew how to make essentially what Gareth and I were doing, the kind of client relationships, the sales, and I say that word deliberately because no business works without sales of some description. She really enabled us to pull the advice process together. And I think my skill set out of the three of us was that I was actually I think bloody good technically back in the day. Some of my colleagues at Paradigm Norton will probably laugh when they hear that. And I had a real vision of what I felt good client relationships were like. And I managed to be able to balance the kind of technical aspects of the jobs with the relational aspects of the job. And, between the three of us, we had a really strong skill set, and we were able to build a business. How fortunate is it on day one? This sounds like a cliche, but it was true. We had a blank sheet of paper and we could pretty much design the business that we wanted. We had a bit of a luxury of not having any guarantees about where our clients might come from, but Gareth and I had successful client relationships in the past. And we knew that, again, as we're seeing history repeating itself in the wider financial services community at the moment, large consolidators taking over client banks and clients feeling like they've lost something that they had when they were actually part of a smaller firm, or that individualism feels like it's been lost somewhat. And so we were very lucky that we were able to get cash flow going reasonably quickly. And then we were able to just build a business that I think really, we were lucky. I think we were at that start of, we certainly weren't the first to it, but we were early adopters of things like cash flow planning, evidence-based investing, which I know is dear to your heart, and platforms. And so we had some super new tools. We had a completely fee-based offering to our clients. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun setting that business up and growing it, and seeing others grow and flourish within the Red House structure that we created.
That's good. So talk to me about where you grew the firm to. Give us some metrics. I like metrics. I know you're a modest lady, but I like to understand, what was it in terms of AUM, whatever metrics you're
Okay.
comfortable to share.
So we grew the business to, it's a really interesting one, because we grew the business to only seven people. When we merged with Paradigm Norton, we were at 5 people, because, as you might appreciate, it's really bloody hard to recruit when you know there's this thing going on in the background and you can't be open and honest with people. But we had assets under management. Goodness me, what would they have been? About 120 million. I guess our turnover was about 1.2 million. We looked after about 70 family groups. So we had a really lovely, almost perfect client base, where we determined from day one that people that we felt we could offer value to. And we were fortunate that we could stick to our knitting on that. So we had a really nice bunch of clients. We had a great team. And the business, we were probably running at probably 20 to 25% true profitability. And I say that only in as much as there's always that game, isn't there, in our world, Abraham, when you ask a business owner, like, what's your profit? What's your profit? And then they forget that they haven't paid themselves, the salary that you would pay somebody if they were running the business for them, and et cetera, et cetera. But that was after we'd all been paid. And so it was a really nice business. When we started to think about our merger, or rather what we were going to do with the business, we set up in 2007, and it was about 10 years later when Gareth had unfortunately had to retire very quickly due to ill health in about 2013. And Linda and I basically bought Gareth out and took the business forward. But we got to a point where we thought, any business, as we know, needs to keep moving forward. And we knew that we needed to grow the business. And we'd have some days where we felt incredibly energized around growing the business. And we knew we had a great business and that we had something important that we could grow. And then other days, to be quite honest, Abraham, and as a business person, you may understand this, you just feel overwhelmed and a bit knackered. And Linda and I were no spring chickens. We weren't super old, but we weren't super young. And so we decided that the right thing for us was to think about what our succession or exit plans could look like. So you've got a bit of metrics in there, Abraham.
Thank you, and you went way beyond my expectation. Thank you for that. And I talk about these things, or I ask about these things, because I just want to learn what the best people, the best firms are doing out there. But also, I think it's really important for other financial planners to understand what this journey look like. And I see you as a role model for personally, but also for a lot of business owners, because you've been there, done it, got the t-shirt. So I'm going to pry more and please tell me to go away. So I'm assuming that you and Linda owned the business after you'd bought Gareth out. I'm interested in how you structured the deal to buy him out, because I'm assuming that you didn't have, I don't know, whatever, hundreds of thousands at the back of your sofa like I do.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you structured the exit deal, and then I'm going to ask you. Anyway, go on.
Okay, let me talk around that. Because it was a really So I alluded to the fact that Gareth needed to retire due to ill health, and we'd gone from having like a 3-year exit plan for Gareth. He was 13 years older than Linda and I, so it was always, Linda and I were always part of his succession plan in many respects. So we'd started off with a 3-year exit plan that we kind of got to 18 months. And then Gareth had a diagnosis that meant he was out within 3 weeks. And so it was very sudden. Emotions were very high. And we, probably led by me, had to go into negotiations with Gareth around what would be a fair exit. And that's not easy. And that's not easy when you're, I think one of the challenges I've always found in my business was my Gareth and I had a brilliant relationship and a difficult relationship, like most relationships are, in as much as we were great friends and colleagues and helped to each other, but we were also in business with each other. And he was also a man who was 13 years older than me that had run big businesses in the past. And I was a woman who'd never been in business before, don't like to talk about money, don't like to feel like I'm speaking out of place, going into the biggest negotiation of my life with somebody who's also in ill health. That's not easy. And so I dug very deep. I had some coaching at the time to try to enable us to reach what would be a fair exit for Gareth, but also an achievable position for Linda and I to be able to afford to buy him out and take the business forward. And so we had a series of conversations, and the day that I'm picturing in my head is Linda, Gareth and I sitting around a table with our accountant, and we're trying to agree on a price. And it was that classic bartering situation whereby Gareth came out with a ridiculous figure, high. I came out with a ridiculous figure, low, because I had to try to then maneuver to what was going to be fair for us both. And thank goodness we got to that figure. We hugged, and how that actually played out was Linda and I both raised some money against our homes to give him an initial payment. And then we agreed we would pay him out over the next 3 years. And we were very proud to be able to pay him out after 2 years, just because we were able to, tighten our belts, which I think is what business owners have to do when you've got a debt. And, and also I think it, as it turned out, Gareth's lifespan was only 3 or so years beyond leaving us. So it was nice that we were able to kind of finish our financial commitments to him and remain friends. He remained on our board until we'd paid him out, quite understandably. But it after we'd gone through the difficult bit, it was all very amicable.
That's incredible. I thank you for that, Ruth. There's just loads of nuggets there for me personally, as someone trying to build a business, and it's incredible. Thank you for that. So then you had another, what I would refer to as exit,
yes,
with with some sort of merger into Paradigm Norton. Talk to me about that. I kind of look at Paradigm Norton as, again, another outstanding financial planning business, bigger than yours, and you guys sort of merge into that business. Talk to me about again, what exit was. I'm assuming Linda's no longer part of Paradigm Norton. She might be, I don't know, I haven't seen her, but you really did get your own, in quotes, exit from in that way. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, because if you think about the Red House, kind of somewhere of 5 to 7 people, turnover of 1.2 million. You've got Paradigm Norton, which I think at that time was about 46, 50 people. I don't know what the turnover was, 6, 7 million, something like that. It could easily have been a story of David and Goliath, I think. with us being, I always have to think about this, David, I think, the little one who is kind of like taken over, but it genuinely wasn't like that. It was a merger, in as much as we may have been the smaller party, but what I think we brought to Paradigm Norton was something a little bit different. I think it gave Paradigm Norton a great platform into London. They already had lots of London-based clients, but it was an opportunity for them to really expand out of the Southwest and their main Bristol hub into London. And we'd got in London a really small but great team of top performers who really were keen to see the business continue to grow and thrive, and a great client bank. There was some kind of things. There were some differences between us and Paradigm Norton around, as you would expect, process and procedures, and what's the right word? Kind of, I think we probably had a more relaxed environment in those days than Paradigm Norton did in those days. And I'm saying that very deliberately because Paradigm Norton have changed quite considerably over the last 4.5 years. But the one thing we did have that saw us through the difficult times was a real values match, which sounds such a cliche, doesn't it? You always hear that in the press releases that we've got the same values, but we had the same values set, and we importantly trusted each other. And like any negotiations and due diligence process, when you're going through the merger of businesses, there are lots of hairy times, lots of times when you're wrangling over ludicrous detail in solicitors' documents, and which is all part of the game almost. Because if you worried about all of the things that you suddenly find are ahead of you, you would never gone into business in the first place, but that all comes out. And we had a kind of hiccup right at the very end that really, I won't go into the detail of, and Linda and I and the directors of Paradigm Norton, we kind of smile and laugh about it now, where we all had to take a really deep breath and go, do we want this to happen or don't we? And we did. And so we made it happen. And, and here we are. Linda, so I remain now, so we completed our merger in December 2017. And I'm now a non-exec director at Paradigm Norton, which I've been doing for the last 18 months, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. And Linda, her contract was only for a year with Paradigm Norton, and she ended up staying for 4 years because she's so bloody good at what she did and really helped Paradigm Norton with their bringing together their processes and operations of having, differing offices. And so, Linda only stepped back in March this year. So, we've both had a good dosing and enjoyment with Paradigm Norton, and it's amazing to see the business growing as it is these days.
It's an incredible business, employees owned, outstanding financial planning, evidence-based business. So talk high level. What is it like these days being a non-exec?
Wow.
What do you do?
What do I do? It's such a good question. It is a really enjoyable position to be in, because I get to see the business that I care about continue to grow and develop. As you say, employee owned, B Corp. I see us looking ahead and think about what our next 10-year vision and strategy needs to look like. But all I have to do, Abram, is rock up to a board meeting once a quarter and sit and chat for, a day and a half. So I'm probably being slightly glib there. But it's really lovely to have that continued connection. I don't have to do the really hard work. And I say that, with a sense of relief, but equally, it's entirely appropriate that hard work and detail is now being carried on by Barry Horner and William Pratt, who were the founders of Paradigm Norton, but also by our up-and-coming, new leaders of the business as they kind of craft a business that's fit for purpose as we kind of move towards 2030. So, we've got some thorny matters that we're looking at the moment, thinking what our future growth strategy is, what succession looks like, what the shape of the governance of a business that's approaching 100 now with ambitions to continue to grow, what that needs to look like. So there's lots of things for us to, get our teeth into, and so, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So, Ruth, Paradigm Norton is a very special firm in my eye, because, a lot of you guys are evidence-based, one of the larger firms out there in that space of evidence-based financial planning firms. And I know you've done, some acquisitions recently of that type of firms. So I guess the question is, is this part of the bigger plan going forward, essentially integrating smaller evidence-based financial planning business into a firm like yours?
I think there are a number of different ways that Paradigm Norton are likely to continue to grow. Without a doubt, Barry gets calls all the time from great firms who are planning what their succession might look like. And so Barry, at any given time, is having initial conversations, and sometimes it's quite a long dating process, and sometimes it's immediately obvious that there's not a fit. But without a doubt, Barry is always open to talk to good firms to see whether there are any synergies to be explored. So whether that's firms, whether that's book buys. Recently, as you alluded to, we've purchased a couple of businesses that we're currently integrating. And we've also had a couple of book buys. What I mean by book buys is senior advisors who are elsewhere, who may or may not have been part of a consolidation story, that are basically looking to find a home which aligns with their own values and those of their clients. And it's an incredibly active market, isn't it, at the present moment? We see it, there's a lot of private equity money going on. I think there's some silly money also being spoken about, I think, within the M&A world, within financial services, within, financial planning. And I think that it's down for any business who is making their choices about what they want to do next, about the decisions they make around what the money might look like. I think with Paradigm Norton, we are an incredibly well-run financially business that is always going to make sure, particularly as we're an employee-owned business, that the security of the business comes first. And it's kind of weighing up what are the right firms that would actually fit into that environment. But I think we have got an awful lot to offer. It may not be top dollar, but I think sometimes, there is more to a kind of sale than just chasing the highest figure. But of course, that's for other people to determine. That's not for me to tell people. But I think when I look around me at the experience I see of others post sales, and I think it's really important to be really honest with yourself about who you're getting into bed with, to use a horrible phrase.
Fascinating stuff. So let's talk about your role at the initiative, it was called, but now Institute of Financial Wellbeing, vice chair, all that stuff. What's going on there?
So this, by the time we go live, Abraham, I think this news will be out there that I'm now the chair of the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. And well done for noticing.
Congratulations!
Recently, I know it's really exciting news, and absolute testament to the hard work of Chris Budd, our founder, Nick Marsh, the CEO, and the rest of the board who are have all worked their socks off to get us to this stage. Yes, I've recently, well, I'm about to become, as we're recording, recently, if you're listening, become chair of the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. In as much as Chris is writing another book, and it's time for Chris as the founder to kind of focus on other things rather than actually continuing to grow the institute. So for me, I've got a real drive and passion to continue to bring change to this incredibly worthy profession that we work in. And when I say incredibly worthy, I kind of like, there's a little bit of me that cringes as I say, you know, because we're not saving people's lives, are we? You know, we're not on the front line. We're not emergency workers. But the more I reflect on the ability to influence that we as financial planners and financial coaches have, it's absolutely enormous. So for me, the Institute of Financial Wellbeing, its purpose is really to help people develop the knowledge and skills to kind of enable people to see that money isn't just to be accumulated. Money is here to use to enhance people's happiness and contentedness and overall sense of well-being. Well-being itself is made up of 5 different factors, and there's research from Gallup on this subject, which I found fascinating. And it's probably instinctive for most of us, but to have overall well-being, you need to have physical health. We know physical well-being. You need to have a career/purpose that helps with people's well-being. It's about social well-being and the quality of your relationships, whether that's with friends or family. It's community well-being. It's how you fit within your community and the people that you can turn to. And of course, there's also financial well-being, and you really need all of those 5 things to come together. You know, the example being, we all know people who earn shed loads of money, but have rubbish relationships with their family, or they never see their friends, that are really unhealthy, and they know nothing about a community outside of the work that they're doing. So we know it's not just about money, and I really feel that we, within financial planning, financial services, have an opportunity to start to change some of the narrative around money. The way it simplistically is for me, Abraham, is, you know, we're a young profession still, financial services, financial advice, financial planning. Wow. Back in the day, we just sold products. That's where I started my career at the turn of the century. It was all about products being sold. And I mentioned when we set up the Red House, we had access to cash flow planning, evidence-based investment platforms. That, for me, that was the second evolution from product sales to planning. I think we're now moving into a third evolution, which I'm calling Financial Planning 3.0. Somebody did point out to me that an American has written a book called that, so I might need to rethink that. But hey, let's go with it. And for me, it is the evolution of versions 1 or 2 with the addition of behavioral science and behavioral economics. We didn't have that knowledge in the past, but also the application of deeper coaching skills, listening and questioning skills to, I think, really nudge people out of what they think they should be their goals and aspirations, to actually just really stop and think about, am I actually leading the life that I want to? So I'm really excited about this third evolution of financial planning. And I think the Institute of Financial Wellbeing is very much contributing to the conversations around this. We want it to be a meeting place where, you know, Abraham, you and I both know the great financial planning firms around London, the Southwest, and across the country. I would love to get all of those planners deeply involved in this conversation, because I believe they're all already running good businesses, but I think they can do it better. I know I could have done it better when I reflect on it. And I think it's the time, I think the zeitgeist of the time is right for us to actually just try to change the way that people think about money. And, we can all have an influence, and it's that ripple effect that really excites me, that we can all get involved in. So that's what we're up to.
Incredible. Your passion for this really truly comes out, as you're talking about it. So for those financial planners listening to this, how can they get involved?
So I would encourage you to go to our website in the first instance. It's the IFW, the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. We run about 3 events a month. I was on one this morning, which was the forum, which was people just sharing how they break down to barriers to having deeper client conversations. So we run 3 different type of sessions each month. We have the annual conference. What we ask, we're a not-for-profit. We really want to grow the membership. The membership is something like, I'm going to say £12 a month, something like that. It's not expensive. We'd love you to come along. There's stacks of information, stacks of things for you to get involved in. We also run the Certificate for Financial Wellbeing, which is a coaching-led course to help develop some of the skills. But yeah, come and have a look. You can come along to an initial session free of charge and just get a taste for what we're up to. But I think I think people will be surprised at the depth of knowledge that already exists within the Institute. And we want to hear from other people. We're not saying we've got the monopoly on financial well-being. We want to be the place where people gather. You mentioned at the start of our conversation, Abraham, us meeting at what was the Institute for Financial Planning. That was a great meeting of people who shared ideas and shared different experiences. That's what we want the Institute for Financial Wellbeing to be. And so, yeah, we'd love to invite everybody to come and join us, come and take a look, see what we're up to.
Good stuff. Ruth, I want to be respectful of your time, but also of my producer, Jake Hosha. He's going to start screaming if I don't wrap this up. I am really, really, truly enjoying the conversation. So thank you very much for being so honest, so forthright with your experience and your wisdom. So I know you host a podcast, Money Espresso. Talk a little bit about that and where we can find you, and indeed anything else that you want to talk about.
Oh, thanks, Abraham. Well, Money Espresso it's been a really fun podcast that I've been running on behalf of Paradigm Norton. We've run for 18 months, and what I really wanted to do was to have conversations with people about their money and life experiences. And so I've had conversations with truly fascinating people who've shared their journey and the intersection with money along the way. Again, by the time this podcast comes out, I will have done my final podcast for Money Espresso. And I'm passing the baton on to colleagues of mine at Paradigm Norton to take that forward. And the reason for that was it was almost like it just felt like I've loved doing it. I really enjoy the whole podcast medium. I love having conversations with people. And so I may well podcast again. But I don't have any plans as we're speaking, but it is a really fun medium. And yeah, so I'm kind of enjoying the non-exec work with PN, the time I'm spending with the Institute of Financial Wellbeing and Learning. And I no doubt will be speaking far and wide on that subject somewhat more as we go over the next few months. And I'm kind of also just working out what, if anything else, I'd like to slot into my days, Abraham. It's still relatively early days for me, kind of getting used to this kind of more flexible way of working. So let's see.
No, that's incredible. And of course, you're an investor in Timeline. I hope you don't mind me sharing that.
Yes.
You were very kind enough to back us. So thank you very much. You're more than welcome to actually say why you did, if you want to, and whether you do other kind of early stage investing, or not? I'm interested.
I'm happy to talk. No, let's talk about timeline first. So, firstly, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'm really excited about what you're doing, Abraham, for a few reasons. I already mentioned that I'm an evidence-based investor myself. I firmly believe in that. What you are offering was something that I wish was available in 2007 when we were setting up the Red House. I think it is a phenomenal service that you're offering to businesses of all sizes to enable them to just sort out the investment piece. Know that bit is being looked after to enable businesses to get on and do, I think, the higher value attributes of what's required for running a good financial planning business. I love your use of tech. I love that you're disrupting what's been a very cozy, stodgy investment world to date. It absolutely needs to be, and all the claptrap that's spoken around investment totally needs to be taken apart. And finally, who couldn't be swayed by your enthusiasm and passion, Abraham?
Wow.
You when you go into a startup, you're backing the founder as much as anything else. And I've got every faith that you're going to continue to grow Timeline and do great things. So that's why I got involved with Timeline. And yeah, I'm doing a few early stage investments, and it's really interesting, Abraham, because I will admit that there has been one that I've done where if I'd been a client of mine when I was a financial planner, I would have been pulling my bloody hair out. I exhibited all of those characteristics of an irrational, greedy investor. But at least I can see that and reflect on it. And fortunately, the stake I've invested is hopefully not going to blow me up. But so it's an interesting space, and Christ knows who can make any sense of the cash flows or whatever and spreadsheets that get thrown at you. I think ultimately you have to go with your gut, and I think some of the things that I just explained, I saw in Timeline. It's something I understood. I can see what you're doing. I can understand the niche. I can talk to you. I can see the passion. I've met some of the team. I don't know whether the figures are going to work or not. Who knows? So I think it's an exciting space, but it's something, I don't profess to be a startup investor genius or anything, but I know some of the businesses that excite me at the moment. So it's a privilege to be able to have a dabble.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for backing me and our team. It does mean a lot to me. You've always been for me. I remember, 10 years ago, was still very, well, not very early, but early in my career, working into the Institute of Financial Planning in London, and ultimately meeting you. You've been an incredible inspiration to me, and I'm sure to many others, especially in our industry where, for whatever reason, we don't have nearly as many leaders, women leaders, as we should. You've been, for me, a shining star in that world. So thank you very much for being so generous with your time and wisdom. Thank you for all you do. And frankly, thank you for who you are. Thank you, Ruth, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Abraham. It's been lovely to chat, and I wish you all this ongoing success with Timeline. And thank you again for having me as a guest.
I'll be remiss if I don't thank my incredible team who worked very hard to put this program together. Thank you very much, guys. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Timeline Retirement Planning Software, and PyTech, low-cost flat fee model portfolio manager. And to you, our listeners, thank you for your time. I hope you've had as much fun listening to the program as we have making it. You can find more about the show at retirementals.com. and you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Abraham on Money. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.